Welcome, B2B startups, change-ups, scale-ups, and grown-ups. This is the B2B Lead Gen Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Schwartzman. Let's do this. Welcome to the B2B Lead Gen Podcast. My guest today is Max Altshuler. He's the Vice President of Marketing at Outreach and CEO of Sales Hacker. He started Sales Hacker in 2013, built it to 100,000 plus members, and in 2018, he sold it to Outreach and became VP of Marketing. Max, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get into Outreach and your book, because I want to talk about both of those, let's talk for a moment about Sales Hacker.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you wind up building a 100,000 plus membership community for salespeople online?
Yeah, so I was working at Udemy, which is an online education marketplace, small startup back in 2011, 2012. And they had entrusted me with building out the sales side of the marketplace, the supply side, which was, getting instructors to teach courses. And I kind of looked at it with, fresh pair of eyes. What if like a normal sales process have never existed before? What would I do right now? I had a blank canvas, and I started reading a lot of books and learning some of the best practices and, layering on certain things that typically worked, but then challenging the status quo on things that, might've been a little more, manual than they should be. So I ended up hiring, a team of virtual assistants in the Philippines to do a lot of our sales development work and go out and get a lot of our leads. I used, Python, which is a programming language to scrape information off sites to fill out our kind of databases and build some of our intent, which led to the copy that we created for these instructors in our emails and phone calls. And then I used an early sales engagement platform called ToutApp as one of their first customers to send all these emails and make these phone calls and things like that. So I pretty much built a reputation for leveraging technology and modern workflows in the sales process, or at least hacky workflows, which is why we called it sales hacking. And that led to me starting a meetup, which led to a conference, which led to the blog, which led to we did meetups in 32 cities globally, which led to a joint conference with Salesforce called Sales Machine, which then eventually led to the acquisition. During that time, I also wrote a book called Hacking Sales, which at this point I probably need a volume 2 for because so much of the technology has changed. But that was about 2015. So lots changed in 5 years. It's been a pretty incredible run. Obviously, the good times that we've had in the 2010s decade of VC money pouring into technology, but a lot of that money pouring into sales technology. So that's been pretty cool.
It's interesting, you switched gears just at the right time because originally we all thought edutech was going to be such a hot category, and that kind of sputtered.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of that has sputtered, but Udemy just raised at a $2 billion valuation. So I guess they're doing okay. I think the ed tech stuff that's sputtered is not exactly the same stuff, but Linda sold to LinkedIn, which was nice. I think a lot of the continuing education stuff is what has really worked, and still continues to work.
So Udemy's doing well, huh? I mean, you look at the courses that they have. I mean, there's such a gap in quality,
Yeah, Udemy's doing well, and I think a big thing about what they've done well and has driven them is not only is it direct to consumer, but now they have Udemy for Business. So there's a B2B, area of their business now where they get. I think they're doing somewhere between 50 and 100 million. ARR. It's a very fast growing a business, and that spun up kind of towards the end of my tenure there. So worked really well for them.
So we're coming out of this decade of massive corporate growth, right? And one of the arrows in the growth quiver is, your product, Outreach.
Yeah.
Talk to us about sort of the stack, the PR tech stack, and sort of how you wound up at Outreach, and what some of the other arrows in the quiver are, and how you sort of build out a PR tech stack.
Yeah, so it's PR tech, recruiting tech, sales tech. A lot of these things look very similar because they have very similar workflows. So you've got your system of record, which is your CRM. In some cases, that's Salesforce. In other cases, it could be a variety of different other solutions that are made tailored for PR or recruiting or whatever it is. Then on top of that, you've got wherever you get your data from, or your LinkedIn. So that's where you find your contact info, whatnot. And then from there, you have your sales engagement platform, which for us is mission critical. So if you have people emailing, and you have people making phone calls, and you have people reaching out in any capacity, you need something that's gonna that you need a platform that's your system of action. You need a place where you can do all those activities, where it's going to be tracked, measured, analyzed. One, for management purposes, so they can see that the reps are doing the right things, but two, so you can A/B test and optimize the things that you're saying, things that you're doing, the way that you're doing it, and three, even adding a level of automation to it. So we have what we call sequences, where you can set up automated sequences that have personalized content in it, or value drivers like ebooks, things like that automatically go out. So on day one, connect with them on LinkedIn, send them an email in the afternoon, make a phone call, leave a voicemail. On day two, follow up with a LinkedIn message and another phone call. On day three, send them another email. On day four, like so on and so on. You can do like a 21-day sequence or something like that to contact them, and it's semi-automated or fully automated, however you want to do it, and it allows your reps to kind of do the right things at the right time every time. So we're building that with Outreach, and there are a lot of new solutions that attach onto that. So you have your system of record, your CRM, you've got your data, you've got Outreach, and then the other solutions that come after that are I'd say less mission critical, but still really interesting, like the conversation intelligence space, which allows you to kind of see inside of the phone calls and emails and get some of that information and intelligence that comes from that. So there's Gong and Chorus there. There's chat like Drift and Intercom, which allows you to interact with people on a web form instead of a lead form, but interact with them on like a chat right on the side of your site. And that really, I think, increases conversions. And these are things that at Outreach, like, we have really deep integrations with, and it's really important that your stack is tightly integrated, so that you don't have any lag time on your your SLA from inbound leads. Your speed to lead is really important. Other technologies, let's see, intent data. So account prioritization and timing is really interesting. Bombora, there's 6 Sense, Terminus, those types of companies. And then let's see, what else is interesting. There's like the Vidyards and the Looms that do video embedded into email. That's another interesting one. And then there's direct mail, which is part of sequences these days. It's something kind of old that now is new, and works really well, breaks through the noise. So you can add in a direct mail task in your sequence, so that on day 5 it triggers, and you send a package to the person on the other end. And when they get that package, you get notified in Outreach, and it automatically triggers the next step, which would be an email or a phone call as soon as they get the package delivered. So that works really well for us. So again, this is like semi-automating best practices, integrating a lot of different elements of your tech stack. But the ROI, on productivity, but also effectiveness is fairly high. So, if you can master that, then like you're really on the right track.
So I want to talk to you about the 13 elements of a successful cross-org alignment strategy from the book. But before I do, this episode of the B2B Lead Gen podcast is brought to you by the 2020 Media Monitoring Buyer's Guide, the most comprehensive current analysis of media monitoring available. This is a vendor-neutral guide with all sorts of useful information about how to choose the right social and traditional media monitoring platform. And you can download the 2020 Media Monitoring Buyer's Guide for free at ericsschwartzman.com/monitoring. So let's start with, this idea of killing the marketing qualified lead. Why and how do we do this?
Yeah, so you have to, it's really all about like integrating sales and marketing. It's not about alignment anymore. It's about that integration. So, if marketing is comped differently than sales, if marketing has different success metrics than sales, you're always going to be off. And marketing is going to think that they're winning, and sales is going to be like, well, we're still waiting for things that are going to close. And like, I think that, the stat or the saying is the death of the CMO is an unhappy CRO, right? So it's like this, if the revenue is not coming in, there's finger pointing that's happening. Now I'm on team sales development should be under marketing, not sales, but people have different, lines of thought there. But I think that pipeline generation is all one motion. Whether it's inbound or outbound, it's all one motion. So, putting that on one team makes a lot of sense. But if they're not going to be on one team, then it needs to be deeply integrated, and your SLA needs to be, clearly outlined to what a sales accepted lead, actually is, versus having all these other definitions for MQLs, SQLs, et cetera, and marketing getting comped or graded on something that isn't necessarily going to close or isn't necessarily a good lead. So we've got, we set up a whole lot of nurture campaigns, at Outreach, and we make sure that we only really count something when it's a sales accepted lead.
So are the sales development reps at Outreach reporting to marketing?
No, they're not here. I personally believe that, but this was all set up before I got here. I've only been here a year and a half, and that's not a change that we made. But we are very tightly integrated. Like, alignment between sales and marketing isn't just a meeting once a week. It is shared goals. It is, obviously a shared way of doing things, and an understanding that, like, we are here to support revenue. We're not here to look.
What are the common KPIs?
SQLs, SALs are the two main ones, and then net new logo. So revenue from net new logo, and then expansion.
And so net new logo?
Net new logo is, prospects, new customers. So what revenue did we get, or what pipeline did we generate from new customers?
So pipeline revenue, projected revenue, not actual revenue.
Both. Yeah.
And how do we get to a reliable attribution model?
Oh man, if I knew that, I don't know. I'd make a lot of money off it. It's hard. It's really hard. There are certain things you just can't measure, and you almost have to build in a buffer for that. And so you have to I think in your marketing budget, you have to build in a buffer for things that you can't measure, things that you just know you have to do, things that are gut driven. And I think in your attribution, line, you have to do the same thing. You're not going to be able to get, you're not going to be able to understand 5, 10, 20% of, what's working. So I think that's okay. Not everything should and can be measured that you do in marketing.
When you look at these tools like TopSpot, where you can see who's downloading what document, and
we use Visible.
They're using.
We have attribution set up and all that.
Do you buy into it? Because you could say, oh well, it's the people who download this deck and use this deck in their pitch meetings close the most deals, but it might just be that they're better salespeople.
Yeah, and there's other things that you need to look like. You need to triangulate along with attribution on things like that. It could just be that the rep is better. If that's the case, then look at their for us, we drink our own champagne, we use our own product, but we can see into how the rep is doing. The rep do the right things at the right time in the deal to get the deal done, And if not, why not? And are they doing that consistently? And so like, who are our best reps? What are our lowest performing reps, and what are the reps not doing? Is it number of activities? Is it, what consists, what the training is, or what those activities consist of that need fixing? So we got ways to fix that too, but we use Visible for attribution for us. It's never perfect though. So there's always going to be a delta. There's always going to be a gap. You kind of have to roll with that. You want to get as close as you can on the things that you can do a good job on, anything that's linked, right? Downloadable assets. And then there's the things that you can't get it on. Like sometimes we have communities that we're in that sometimes somebody will answer a question and a lead will come in from that community. We won't know that it came from that community, but like it came from a community post. Somebody really liked Outreach. They posted about it. That person saw it, came in. We might never find out. So you still want to sponsor the community though, because you're getting value out of it, right? Like sometimes it's just a gut thing. So I think it's really, some organizations, they're really adamant on like measure everything, get attribution for everything. And all the time you spend, trying to do that on some things, and initiatives that you don't end up doing, I think it could be detrimental. So
I apologize for jumping around here, but as you're talking, things are popping into my mind here, and I'm thinking about account sourcing. And I'm thinking about, for you guys, account sourcing is pretty straightforward, because if I'm a Salesforce customer, I'm fair game.
Yeah.
But you think about so many of these other companies that maybe don't have a full stack yet. They're just getting started. Their legacy, they're on some old system, and they're trying to, get moved over. For other companies that aren't necessarily in tech, but are looking at CRM, looking at outreach, and looking at some of these other tools with the prospect of building a sales tech stack, when you talk to them about account sourcing, what should they be looking for to figure out who should be plugged in as an account into their database?
Yeah. So I'd say most tech companies have like a sales ops or rev ops that's doing that work for them. If you're not in a business where that work is done for you and you have to go source your own accounts, I think you can do a couple things, and it's all about ICP. There's you will not be successful if you're not speaking to the right people, and right people at the right time with the right message, is a key to winning. There's a story that I used to do in my presentations when I was doing keynotes and stuff like that to that audience about girls selling Girl Scout cookies. And so if you're a girl selling Girl Scout cookies, what's the best place to go sell your cookies? So I read an article once about this girl who went and she set up shop right outside of a cannabis dispensary, and she sold her cookies in like record time, and she won like a trophy for most boxes sold. Because you're there, and these people are going to be having the munchies later, so they're going to buy a bunch of cookies.
You're shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah, if she set up shop with Girl Scout cookies in front of a gluten-free restaurant, you're probably not going to sell a lot of cookies, because one, they don't eat the
supermarket, and that's where you always see them, in front of the supermarket.
Yeah, because they already got their stuff, and they don't eat the cookies to begin with, right? Like gluten-free, none of these are gluten-free. You're not going to sell any cookies. So it's really just about making sure you're in front of the right customer and having the right ICP. So when you're thinking about,
and the right chaperone, of course, too.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. When you're thinking about sourcing, your accounts, it's really important that they're in your ICP. So like, where can you go to find companies that are competitors to you? Who are they going after? Companies that are complementary to you, who are they going after? Can you go to their websites and see what customers they have? Can you, is it something where you can go on like Craigslist and see, what they're doing? There are a bunch of businesses that are built off Craigslist. When I was selling, so like Airbnb, for example, Airbnb built their business off going on Craigslist and pinging people that were renting out their apartments on Craigslist to rent it out on Airbnb instead. Udemy, for example, we had to have people create video courses. So we would go to places where video courses lived, and we would contact those people. But then also we would go to places where books were. We'd go to Amazon, we'd find authors, and we'd say, hey, I saw you write a book on X, Y, and Z. Would you want to create a video course for that? You can get extra revenue out of it. You can, people sometimes want to read a book. People also sometimes want to watch listen to a video course. So we were just trying to figure out like where are our ideal personas, our ideal audiences. So I think like really depends on your business, but complementary products, competing products are really good ways to figure out, where your customers can come from. Your current book of business. So go out and do like data lookalike on what your current book of business looks like. That's another great way to do it. Sometimes it's straightforward and sometimes it's a little harder, but once you start closing, let's say 5 or 10 unaffiliated customers, then you know that there's something there.
So in your book, Sales Engagement, you write about detailing personas in buckets that reps can use to become experts at knowing where and how to identify a company that has a problem they can solve. So when you're building these buckets, what information about prospective customers do you wind up using most?
Well, there are a lot of different pieces of an ICP. So you've got like an ideal customer at a company level. So what types of, actually you got a couple, like industry, company now, all the way down to the type of person internally at that company. It's like all about creating that story eventually. So blah, blah, blah works in healthcare at XYZ company. She's the senior director of sales operations. This is the pain that she has. Like if you can create that customer story, then you can extrapolate out, or actually you typically use all the things you learned to create that customer story. But coming backwards, you can say, okay, this is their pain because this is what she has. This is the ideal title. This is an ideal company, and this is an ideal like industry. So you can look at segments. You can look at say, all right, our ideal customer is 10,000 employee plus. So like enterprise. Our ideal customer is typically in an industry that, does X, Y, and Z. So you can say, okay, manufacturing, and also like shipping and logistics. Our ideal customer, because of that, you can go on and like LinkedIn and find all the companies that are over, 10,000 employees in those two areas, pretty quickly. Or you can use, some platforms like HD Data or Datanize or things like that through Zoom Info to go out and find those companies. Then you understand like who cares about this, like who are the people with the pain, what are the stakeholders. You can almost do like a account map of what that looks like. So you have the person with the pain, the end user, the signer, stakeholder. There's a bunch of different levels that you're going to have to speak at. So for us, I can tell you about outreach. We have our end user is typically the rep, so like a account executive or a sales development rep. The person with the pain is usually their manager or direct, report, or the person who runs sales operations, who has to deal with the tech stack and the data. And then the signer and the approver is the VP of sales or the CRO. So for us, we have to make sure that like when we build out our ICP, we're taking into account the industries we're going into, the size of the companies that we're going into, the actual companies that we want to contact. But then in those companies, we have to develop champions at the end user level. We have to engage their boss and make sure that like they have the buy-in. And then we also have to engage sales operations, who's going to be doing the actual implementation work. And then we have to engage the executives who are going to be opening their wallets and approving the budget. And so, and you actually, and this is like a step past your question, but you actually have to develop different pitches for each of them in a lot of occasions. So once you drill down into your ICP and you really understand that, then there's different pitches that you need to provide to each level. It's actually a book by Skip Miller called Above and Below the Line Selling, where he goes into like, they all speak a different language. So for us, the sales manager speaks, Greek, the sales ops person speaks Spanish, and the VP of sales or CRO speaks, French or whatever it is, Russian, let's say. So they're very different. And the pitch that you create or tailor for each one has to be different, because if you speak, Greek to the guy who speaks Russian, they're not going to understand what you're saying. So if if my pitch to a VP of sales is like, you are going to be able to streamline your activities in your workflow, well, that's a pitch that I would give to a rep. A VP of sales it's not going to resonate with. What does the VP of sales care about? The VP of sales cares that their team is going to hit their number, not this quarter, not next quarter, but Q4, Q1, Q2 of next year. Like, that's what they get graded on. So you have to have a completely different pitch for the VP of sales versus, the person on the front lines of the end user. So it's not just about understanding your ICP, and drilling into those different buckets, but it's about tailoring your message even beyond that to, like, once you have your ICP, there's the ICP at the company level. So 10,000 employees, these different industries, these types of companies. And then there's it at the employee level. Here are the 3 key stakeholders or 10 key stakeholders I'm going to need to engage with at that company to get a deal done.
Sometimes if I'm boning up on an industry for a client and I'm at a trade show, I'll just sort of go around to different booths and talk to reps. And sometimes I'll be really shocked at the lack of sort of industry knowledge that the reps will have. They may know their product really well, but maybe they don't know the competition, or they don't kind of know some of the bigger trends in the industry. And so, when I read your book and when I listen to you, I hear, and then I see these fast growing companies that use this technology. I guess my question is, are those companies that are killing it with Outreach and Chorus.ai and Gong and Top Spot and all these different, full tech stack, sales tech stack products? Or do they basically just have the best salespeople that really care and go the extra mile? Is everyone really, parting with discretionary effort to make sure they know the industry inside out? Are they really using the buckets? What's your experience there? Is it an even application of the tools, or do some people use them, some people not?
I think there's always an uneven. I think there's always, with any technology, some people that are resistant, some people that are harder to adopt. I think you want to have typically adoption above like 75%, 80%, around that, to have a lot of success. And it's even hard to get there. It depends what the solution is, though. Like, if it's a departmental tool, your adoption should be much higher. If it's a organization transforming platform or something like that, and there's a fair amount of change management involved, the adoption is going to be lower, and the companies have to do more to force that adoption. And go through waves. Like, when Salesforce started, or the first online CRM started, that was probably hard for people to adopt that were used to like a room on their desk. But you eventually adopt it because now I don't know a lot of people who use Rolodexes. It's gone out the window. And I think I was on a podcast actually earlier today, and we were talking about some of this kind of like need to have versus nice to have technology. And one of the things that he mentioned was, he sees that having technology like Outreach, Gong, Chorus, you name it, at a company is like when like college athletes go to visit colleges and they get the tour and they go to the gym and the facilities and they see like all the nice weights and stuff like that they have, and they're able to recruit the best talent because they have the nicest facilities. He sees it as the same thing. Like, he's like, I want to have our team set up on a really nice tech stack. So like, they come in here and they have like all the tools at their disposal to do their best. And, they also have no excuses. And I thought that was really interesting because like that, it really is a game changer. And you end up bringing in the best talent. Like, there's only so much the best salesman in the world can do. At a certain point, they're at a huge disadvantage. So once upon a time, door-to-door sales existed and nothing else. And then the phone was invented. So if you were the best salesman in the whole world, amazing, whatever, but you didn't embrace the phone, you were at a significant disadvantage. The only people you could sell were the people in your couple block radius, but the person with the phone could sell anybody. And then when the computer was invented and Wi-Fi and email were invented, if you didn't embrace that, then you were still at a significant advantage. So right now, like if you put the best salesman in the world out there and you say, okay, you can only do door-to-door sales, and you put them up against an average salesman who has all these other things at their fingertips, I still think the average salesman is going to blow them out of the water because there's only so much they can do, right?
Max, in your book, you write that seller-focused content is destined to lose. And, when you're developing customer-centric content, there's a lot of stuff you can write about, a lot of content you can create. So how do you decide what information is most important to the customers so that you can deliver information that satisfies their needs? And,
it's about talking
and
to the
specifically,
customers.
what data in particular are you looking at as a measure of what customers are interested in and what they need to advance through the customer journey?
Yeah, so we use a lot of like outward facing blog posts as sales enablement content. So we're able to see like how many people are viewing that and use that as a key measurement.
Just views? What else are you looking at?
Views, CTAs on emails that we send to see so views would be on blog posts, CTAs and response rates on emails or newsletters, things like that, really matter.
You're not looking at bounce rate or time on page, just views?
We might be looking at time on page. I'm not sure how much we're looking at bounce rate. We try not to overcomplicate it too much. We're also talking to a lot of customers at this point. Like I'd say it's different for earlier stage companies. They need to be a little bit more granular to like kind of get off the ground. We sort of know what's resonating or what customers want to hear. Like we've got enough of them now where they come to us and say like, we want more about X, Y, and Z. And if we hear that enough, we'll create the content. And typically we're pretty good at giving our customers what they want, but also giving our sales reps, what they need. And while it's not seller focused, our sales reps are front line. So they hear what the customers and prospects want, and then they relay that back to us. And I think it's really important why your SDRs and marketing also, need to be very, very closely aligned. Because
when you were in early days at Sales Hacker, how did you decide what information, what stories to write, what content to generate?
That was less data driven, honestly. In the early days, it was, here's what I would want to hear about. Here's somebody. All of our stuff was practitioner led. So like, here's somebody I would want to hear from, and here's something that they've been wanting to talk about for a while. Let's give them a stage to do it on. One of the reasons why Sales Hacker was so successful is all practitioner led content. So it was the people that are like doing the work, that are in the weeds right now at the same types of companies that our readers are at, and that kind of nobody ever had like a platform to do that before. Like if you're a VP of sales and you have something to say, your options were to like write it on LinkedIn, write it on your personal blog, or write it on your company blog. If you write it on your personal blog, you get like 5 views because nobody's going to that. If you write it on your LinkedIn, you get like 20 because articles don't get a lot of love. And you're not going to write it on your company blog because if you're working for a BI company, they're not going to post about something in the sales process. So we gave them an audience. We gave them a platform with people, like a built-in audience, so to speak. So we cared about making kind of like a living, breathing sales encyclopedia and letting the best and brightest write about, whatever it is that they wanted to write on. We weren't so data driven until, let's say, 3 years in, we started understanding that like growth was the name of the game and like SEO was like the key thing that mattered. And that's when we started getting really data driven, and we let the data from what people were searching for on Google decide what we needed more content around. So sales development best practices, if that was one of the huge keywords, we would develop more content around sales development best practices, and so on and so on. And that's when we really started to get like data driven.
Talk to us about the number of touches it takes to get a response, because I think for a lot of us who are not in sales, I know I get skittish about reaching out to somebody too many times if I'm booking them for a podcast because I don't want to piss them off.
Yeah.
What's acceptable? And particularly in this environment, that the one we're in now, with the pandemic, how do you adjust your approach to how many times you come into can make an excuse to contact somebody?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of like 6 or 7 seems like a good number, and then give it a rest for a little while. And I do 6 or 7 in like a short period of time, maybe over like 10 days to 2 weeks, and then you give it a rest for a little while, and then so on and so on. Now, I don't do a lot of prospecting from like an SDR standpoint. I don't have like a book of like 200 accounts that I'm doing, but I do prospecting like one-to-one quite a bit. So I will reach out on a lot of different mediums, and that actually spreads out the abusive feeling from the buyer, I think. So like, if you're making a call, leaving a voice message, sending an email, sending a LinkedIn connection, sending a LinkedIn message, following them on Twitter, there's a lot of different avenues where it doesn't feel like bombarding all at like one place. But at the same time, there's a lot of different ways that you can almost add value at scale where it doesn't feel like selling. Like, I'm not pitching you. I'm connecting with you. I'm helping you. I'm sending you some stuff. And then eventually I earn the right to pitch. But, I say this all the time to salespeople, like your job on the first conversation is not to close a deal. Your job on the first conversation is to get the second conversation. And then on the second conversation is to get the third conversation. Like, a lot of times this isn't a one call close type situation. So I think if you know that and you believe that, and you send your emails or make your phone calls or touch points or whatever they are with that in mind, you're going to be a lot more successful than if you're like, all right, I'm going to send the whole pitch on this one email. Then you're like bombarding people with a bunch of pitches, and that's not going to work.
His book is Sales Engagement: How the World's Fastest Growing Companies Are Modernizing Sales How the World's Fastest Growing Companies Are Modernizing Sales Through Humanization at Scale. Max, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. This is Eric Schwartzman for the B2B Lead Gen Podcast. See you next time.